All right, today we are diving into one of the most complicated and, frankly, most important relationships on the world stage, the partnership between the United States and Pakistan. It's a story packed with high-stakes strategy, a whole lot of mistrust, and some truly devastating human costs. So let's get right into it. To really get what's at stake, you have to imagine being on the ground when the lifeline gets cut. This quote here from Rob William at War Child, it just lays it out so starkly. A suspension of aid isn't just a pause. For the organizations doing the work, especially the ones that don't have a ton of cash lying around, it's a full stop. Game over. And the impact of these decisions is just immediate. When the U.S. decides to freeze aid, which, by the way, is something that happens again and again in this relationship, you can literally measure the consequences in people's lives. In just the first month of one of these freezes, an estimated 3.4 million women in Pakistan lost access to contraceptives. You know, these aren't just abstract numbers. These are vital health services that just vanished.
And the shockwave doesn't stop at the border. Nope. It ripples right into neighboring Afghanistan, a country whose stability is so tied to Pakistan's. These same policy shifts meant that over 9 million people there were suddenly at risk of losing access to essential health and protection services. It really shows you, doesn't it? A decision made thousands of miles away creates this massive human crisis.
So let's look at the money side of things. This chart breaks down just how brutal it is for the NGOs on the ground when the U.S. issues what are called stop work orders. Just look at that. A staggering 39% of them faced funding cuts of $1 million or more. I mean, for any organization, that's a huge hit. But for a smaller local partner, a cut like that is absolutely catastrophic. It could literally threaten their entire existence. The takeaway here is pretty stark, right? We're not just talking about foreign policy jargon or numbers on a spreadsheet. We are talking about actual human lives hanging in the balance every time a superpower decides to change its mind. And, there's another really scary side effect to all of this. When that aid disappears, it creates a vacuum. But it's not just a vacuum of food or medicine. It's a vacuum of hope. This warning from an NGO makes it clear. When people feel abandoned, that desperation can push them straight into the arms of gangs or armed groups, just as a way to survive. So this aid, it isn't just charity. It's often a critical piece of security for the whole region. Which brings us to the big question. How did we even get here? How did this partnership become so fragile, so brittle, that these aid cuts can just happen out of the blue? Well, to get that, we've got to jump in the time machine and look back at a long and pretty troubled history.
Yeah, this relationship, it has never, ever been a smooth ride. It's much more like a roller coaster. You have these incredible highs of intense cooperation, followed by these stomach-churning drops of deep neglect and even punishment. And that constant whiplash, that's everything. It's the key to understanding where we are today.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It is wild. During the Cold War, Pakistan was a crucial U.S. ally against the Soviets. Then, bam, the 90s hit, and suddenly it's a sanctioned state because of its nuclear program. Then 9/11 happens, and practically overnight, it becomes the most important partner in the war on terror. And now, we're in this long, slow, strategic drift apart. Every single one of those swings just added another layer of baggage and mistrust. And this right here, this is the real heart of the problem. It's like both sides are watching two completely different movies. From Washington's point of view, Pakistan is this transactional ally that's kind of playing a double game. But if you're in Islamabad, you see a superpower that uses you when it's convenient and then just abandons you. That fundamental lack of trust, it just poisons almost every single interaction. And if all that wasn't complicated enough, you have to throw in all the immense pressures happening inside Pakistan. You've got an incredibly powerful military that's always been a huge political player. You have an economy that's constantly on the brink, a serious and resurgent domestic terrorism problem, and politics that are, well, chaotic, to put it mildly. It's a total pressure cooker, and any U.S. policy has to try and operate right in the middle of it. Okay, so let's bring it to today. Because on top of this already messy, strange relationship, you've got to add the defining geopolitical contest of our time, the
the massive rivalry between the United States and China. And you can see how the chessboard is set up, right? The US is going all in on its partnership with India, seeing it as the key to balancing out China's power in the region. So what does Pakistan do? It leans even harder into its own long-standing friendship with China, its so-called all-weather friend. So suddenly, this US-Pakistan thing isn't just about them anymore. It's a key fault line in a much, much bigger game. And this quote right here from Pakistani Senator Mushahid Hussain Syed, it just nails the common view from Islamabad. He's basically saying China is the reliable, strategic partner, they're always there. But the US? The US is seen as tactical, fickle, a partner who only shows up when they need something and then, as he puts it, doesn't even look back. Ouch. So, the billion-dollar question is, what now? Given this incredibly complex and deteriorating situation, what's the path forward for the US? Well, back in Washington, this is a fierce debate, and experts are proposing two very different visions for the future. You can basically boil it down to two competing camps. You've got one side, the pragmatic approach, saying, hey, let's be realistic here. Let's just focus narrowly on the few things we can agree on, like security. Then you've got the other side, the normalization approach, arguing, nope, that old model is completely broken. We need to tear it down and build something totally new. Okay, so let's dig into that pragmatic playbook first. The core idea is deal with Pakistan as it is, not as you wish it were. So you accept its flaws, you keep those crucial military-to-military communication lines open, and you cooperate on very specific shared threats, like stopping groups like ISKT. It's less about trying to be best friends and more about just managing risks and preventing worse outcomes. The normalization playbook, on the other hand, is a complete 180. It argues that decades of security-focused aid have been a total failure. They haven't bought any lasting goodwill. The solution? Stop treating Pakistan as a special case. Focus on trade, climate change, cultural exchanges, things you do with any normal country. The idea is to build a broader, more resilient relationship from the ground up. And interestingly, there are some signs of new thinking happening outside of these academic debates. U.S. officials are now openly talking about cooperation on things like critical minerals and energy. Now, this could be a potential game changer, right? A new economic frontier that's completely separate from all the old security baggage. But, and this is a really big but, no matter which path you talk about, there's always this giant, terrifying shadow that hangs over everything. This quote, reportedly from Pakistan's army chief, is just chilling. It's the ultimate reminder of the stakes. We are talking about a nuclear-armed country. And while the generals talk of missiles, the real echoes of these policy debates are felt most profoundly by ordinary people. A plea like this, from a young woman in Afghanistan, brings us right back to where we started. For her, these high-level decisions aren't geopolitical. They're not abstract. They're the difference between being counted as a human being or, in her own words, just fading away entirely. Ultimately, this tangled web of the US-Pakistan relationship, it does more than just show us a diplomatic challenge. It really reveals a moral one. And it leaves us with this fundamental question, one that applies way beyond just this one partnership. In a world of high-stakes strategy and geopolitical chess, how do we ever truly account for the human lives that hang in the balance?